The crawler rolled through the sanctuary gate before Petra had even finished feeding Tauveth his morning fruit, and the man who stepped out of it wore the kind of smile that meant he had already decided how things were going to go. She recognized the Tauveth Holdings logo on the door panel. She had seen it 3 times in the 8 months since her father died, once on a letter, once on a second letter, and once on the face of a company broker who had stood in their kitchen and told her that a 14-year-old could not legally hold a frontier sanctuary license without an adult co-signatory. Petra had thanked him and shown him the door. This man was not the broker. He was broader and older and had brought 2 others with him, both carrying handling equipment that she recognized from the interstellar transport catalogs her father had kept on his shelf, crush cages, not the relocation kind. "Morning," the man said. His name was printed on his jacket in blue letters, HARVEN Field Acquisitions. "We have a transfer order. Your Tauveth is being moved to the Tauveth Habitat Facility on Verath Station. You've had 3 formal notices." Petra set down the fruit bowl. Behind her, 12 meters back along the feeding platform, Tauveth had gone very still. The Tauveth were not native to this frontier world. Her father had brought the sanctuary's only resident here 14 years ago, when the species had been displaced from their colony world habitat by strip mining operations, and the last 16 surviving adults had been distributed to registered preserves across the outer settlements. The one her father had accepted had been 3 years old, barely larger than a grown man, and had arrived terrified and half-starved, and had spent its first 6 weeks refusing to leave the shed at the back of the compound. Now it stood 4 meters tall and weighed close to 1,000 kilos, and it had not been afraid of anything in a long time, except, once, a thunderstorm that had come in low and fast off the ridge and struck a tree near the water trough. That time it had moved to Petra's position with the speed of something that forgot it was large, and had sat down so close to her that she had to lean against its knee to stay upright. She had been 9 then. Her father had taken a photograph she still kept above her bed. Tauveth species classification in the Colonial Registry listed them as solitary, territorial, and capable of sustained force output that no portable restraint system had yet been rated to contain. The Tauveth Holdings application to transfer one to a habitat facility had noted all of this, and then explained, in the polite language of corporate wildlife acquisition, that the facility had invested heavily in new containment architecture and was confident in its protocols. Her father had written back twice with the word no and not much else. Now her father was gone and the transfer order was signed, and Harvin was unfolding it toward her like she would want to read it. "I have a legal challenge pending," Petra said. "That's between your solicitor and ours," Harvin said. He had the practiced patience of someone who had done this many times and had never once been wrong about how it ended. "In the meantime, the order is active and we're here to execute it. I'd appreciate your cooperation." One of the others had started moving toward the feeding platform. The other one was reading something on a handheld unit, a sedation protocol, probably, because that was how the catalog said you moved a Tauveth. You did not move a Tauveth awake. Tauveth had not moved. He was watching the man moving toward his platform with a focus that Petra recognized, and that Harvin had not been here long enough to recognize. "You need to stop," Petra said. Harvin smiled again. "I understand this is difficult, but you're a minor, the license lapsed at your father's passing and—" "I'm not talking to you," Petra said. "I'm talking to him." She raised her voice slightly, not to Harvin but to the one approaching the platform. "Stop walking toward him, he doesn't know you." The man paused. He looked at Harvin. "She's 14, Harvin said. "Keep moving." The first thing that happened was that Tauveth stood up. He had been sitting, which was the default when Petra was working on the platform, his preferred posture for the hour after feeding when he liked to watch the ridge line and make the low resonant sound in his chest that she thought of as contentment. He unfolded from that position in a way that was not fast, exactly, but was completely, irreversibly committed, and when he was fully upright the feeding platform roof was no longer between his shoulders and the sky. The man walking toward the platform stopped. The third man, the one with the handheld, took a step backward. Tauveth looked at Harvin. Harvin had very good composure for a moment that deserved none. He said, "The transfer protocol includes remote sedation," and Petra watched him reach for the unit on his belt. She moved faster than he did. She had grown up running on the sanctuary grounds, which were rocky and uneven and large, and she had been keeping up with a 1,000-kilo creature's idea of a brisk morning walk since she was 6 years old. She crossed the distance between herself and Harvin in 4 steps, put her hand on his wrist before he could raise the unit, and said, very quietly, "Don't." He looked at her hand. He looked at her face. He was 30 years older than her and twice her weight, and had probably never had a 14-year-old physically stop him from doing anything. Behind Petra, Tauveth made a sound that was not contentment. It was lower than contentment. It moved through the ground. She had heard that sound exactly twice before in her life. Once when a poacher had come over the north fence during a night she and her father had been sitting outside. Once when a district transport driver had made the mistake of trying to manually pull the sanctuary's gate open instead of waiting for Petra to remote it. Both times her father had put a hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "Steady, he's reading you." She had not understood that until she was older. Tauveth did not react to threats the way most animals did, not to noise, not to size, not to the smell of hostile intent. He reacted to her. When she was calm, he was calm. When she was frightened, he was not calm at all. When she was angry. She was not frightened now. She took her hand off Harvin's wrist and stepped back 1 pace and tilted her head toward the gate. "The transfer order is pending challenge. You don't have execution rights while the challenge is active. That's in the Colonial Welfare Code, Section 41. I sent that citation to your legal division 6 weeks ago." Harvin stared at her. "Section 41, she said again. "Subclause C, an acquisition order cannot be physically executed while a registered welfare challenge is under active review with a licensed adjudicator. Mine was filed with adjudicator Severin at Waypoint Carath and accepted for review on the 14th of last month. I have the confirmation number if you need it." The sound from behind her had not stopped. It had, if anything, gotten quieter, which was worse. Quiet meant focused. The man with the handheld unit had put the handheld unit down. Harvin was doing the calculation she had watched adults do her entire life. The calculation that involved looking at her age, her size, the absence of any visible authority backing her up, and trying to decide whether the thing standing behind her was actually the problem it appeared to be or whether it was just large. The second man, the one who had stopped walking toward the platform, had made his decision. He was now standing very still with his hands in a position that communicated he had no intention of moving them. "You're bluffing," Harvin said. "You don't have a confirmation number." Petra reached into the front pocket of her work jacket and took out a folded piece of printed paper. She unfolded it and held it toward him. "Case number 44 CV 2291, adjudicator Rivnas Severin. Status under review, date accepted the 14th. Harvin did not take it from her hand. He read it where it was. Behind Petra, Tauveth moved. He did not move toward the men. He moved toward Petra. He covered the distance from the feeding platform to the edge of the enclosure in a way that took about 4 seconds and made no sound that could be described as quiet. And then he sat down, directly behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth coming off his chest. His arms rested on either side of her, not touching her, not restraining her, just there. He looked at Harvin over the top of her head. Harvin looked at the case number. Harvin looked at Tauveth. "We'll verify this with legal," Harvin said. His voice had acquired a quality. it had not had when he got out of the crawler. "That's fine," Petra said. "If the challenge is dismissed." "It won't be," she said. "The survey data from my father's records documents population viability concerns for the remaining Tauveth cohort. A habitat facility environment would suppress the behavioral markers that make the species viable for potential reintroduction. My father prepared a 50-page brief on this. I submitted it along with the challenge." Harvin looked at her for a long moment. She was 14 years old, standing in front of 1,000 kilos of apex primate that was currently close enough to her that its breathing moved her hair. She was holding a printed legal confirmation, and she had not blinked. "Your father prepared a 50-page brief," he repeated. "I finished it," she said. "He got to 43 pages. Something moved through Harvin's expression, not quite respect, but the particular stillness that happened when a person recalculated a situation and found the new number much larger than expected. "We'll be in contact," he said. He made a small motion to the other two, the gesture of a man who would prefer to leave and needed that exit to look deliberate. They walked back to the crawler. Harvin followed. The doors closed. The crawler reversed through the gate. Petra stood there until it disappeared around the first ridge bend, and the dust settled back onto the road. The gate sensor beeped once when it registered the crawler's transponder leaving the monitored zone. Then silence, just the ridge wind and the sound of something very large breathing behind her. Then she let out a breath that had been waiting in her chest for several minutes. Tauveth's arms were still on either side of her. She turned around and put both palms flat against the dense dark fur on his chest, between his collarbones, where he liked it, and felt the resonance there, that low vibration that the Colonial Registry had never found an accurate description for, something between a purr and a drumbeat. "Okay," she said. He made the sound that meant acknowledgement, or contentment, or agreement, or possibly all three. She had never been able to fully sort out where one ended and another began. His chin came down and rested on the top of her head, which was his preferred response to situations that had required patience from both of them. She stayed there for a while. The challenge ruling came back 11 days later. Adjudicator Severin found in favor of the sanctuary on every point raised in the brief. The Section 41 stay was made permanent pending full ecological review. The Tauveth Holdings transfer order was suspended. A secondary finding recommended that the Colonial Welfare Board conduct a review of the company's acquisition protocol for species listed under the Frontier Viability Clause, which was the kind of language that meant someone in the legal division was about to have a difficult several months. Petra read the ruling twice, made a copy, and went out to the feeding platform. Tauveth was already there, waiting in the morning light with the patience of something that weighed 1,000 kilos and had decided, a long time ago, that this was where it lived and this was whose footsteps it listened for. He tracked her across the compound the way he always did, not turning his whole body, just his eyes, that amber focus that the Colonial Registry described as territorial marking behavior, and that she had always just thought of as how he looked at her. She climbed up to the platform, sat down beside the fruit bowl, and held the ruling up so he could see it. He couldn't read it, she knew that. She told him what it said anyway. His head came down to her level, and he looked at the paper with the focused attention he gave to things she showed him. A look she could not explain to anyone who asked, that specific quality of attention that was not comprehension and was not absence, but something she had never found a better word for than listening. "We're staying," she said. He held his position for a moment. Then he turned his gaze to the ridge line, where the morning light was coming in flat and gold, and he made the low, resonant sound that she had been hearing her whole life. Contentment, she thought, or home, probably both. She reached out and put her hand on his forearm, and they watched the light move on the ridge together, and neither of them moved until the sun was fully up and the fruit needed sorting.